You learn a lot about a society based on how they treat their children, and that is especially true in Arcane. Let's talk about how the children in Arcane teach us about the values of Zaun and Piltover. And make sure you subscribe if you want more Arcane analysis. This is a topic I haven't really seen many people get into yet, which is crazy because the symbolism of children in Arcane starts from the very first second of the show. We open up on Vi and Powder, who have just watched their parents pass away, and they are immediately comforted by Vander, who isn't technically their family, but we learn later that he babysits them at the last drop when their parents are working. And without hesitation, he takes responsibility immediately for raising not only Vi and Powder, but also Milo and Clagger. He becomes their dad. They call him dad. They are one big adopted family. Now, you could argue that that's just Vander and his good heart, but we have a lot of evidence that this speaks to a wider cultural phenomenon in Zaun. For example, Benzo also seems to adopt Echo. And we get more of an explanation on the communal way the Zaunites treat children in a flashback that happens even before the first episode. And that is, of course, when Felicia finds out that she's pregnant and she goes to Silco and Vander before she even goes to the father, which I think speaks to the way family units are seen in Zaun versus how they're seen in Piltover. But I'll get into that in a second. But Felicia tells them that today is the day that they're going to figure this whole Zaun thing out because she's pregnant and she cannot do this alone in such an oppressed society. So she puts it on both of their shoulders, and they are willing to take it because they love Felicia. She is their best friend. And that just seems indicative of the mentality of the Undercity at large. The oppression of Piltover affects children the most. They are the most vulnerable, and so they are the most protected by other people in Zaun. They are a symbol of something to fight for. Now let's compare that to the culture of Piltover, which operates a lot more like an American culture where there are a bunch of individual nuclear family units. In fact, these family units are so important that your family name becomes a status symbol. And there's a hierarchical structure based on your family name. For example, the last name Kierman is going to go very far in Piltover, a lot farther than the name of somebody who is in the merchant class. Even among the counselors in Piltover, the people that are most elite in Piltover, there's a bunch of jealousy about Mel because she has the Medarda name. It's even said that the Medarda name enchants people. So if last names are so important in Piltover, how come there are no last names in Zaun? And if you haven't realized that, just think about it. You don't know the last name of Jinx, of Vi, of Echo, Silco, Vander. Nobody in the Undercity has a last name. And that is not just some accident by the writers. They didn't just forget to put in a last name. That speaks to a wider cultural phenomenon. Because the Zaun family units are so fractured by the oppression of Piltover that there is no reason to even acknowledge the family unit. It may even be painful to acknowledge the family unit because chances are you are going to lose some of your blood relations and end up in a found family. There's no sense in putting a last name to anyone when kids end up in these larger foster units. And I don't think that they see a purpose in familial identity because their community just isn't structured by blood relations. Like the children see Vander as their true and honest father. Jinx sees Silco as her actual father. It doesn't matter that they're not related by blood. And if they placed more importance on being related by blood, then that would take away or make these adoptive relationships seem less valid. And the fact that there are no individual family units creates a larger sense of community and loyalty among all Zaunites. And that community and that loyalty makes them treat children as a precious commodity. And we really don't see that same respect and regard for children in Piltover. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. Kids seem less respected. Like when the kids accidentally steal the Hextech and blow up Jace's room, there is an all out manhunt. And they know that the people who did this were just 5 children, but they want to find them and throw them in prison for trying to get a little piece of the pie for themselves. And in fact, they do throw Vi in prison when she's a child. Even worse, when Caitlin finds her, we learn that the guards beat Vi up very often. And to me, this disregard for children really symbolizes the individualistic nature of Piltover versus the communal nature of Zaun, because even the worst villains in Zaun often protect kids. Silco cannot help but take in Powder when she needs him. And not only does Silco take her in, but all his associates become responsible for her, which is a little funny considering how badly she hurt most of his associates. Like Savika doesn't have an arm because of powder, Singe was severely burned because of powder, but both Savika and Singe still take responsibility for keeping Jinx alive and well. Because above all else, in a communal society like Zaun, loyalty wins out. And this is a trend we see the next generation take on themselves, right? Like Echo takes on a lot of orphan children in the Firelights commune. And probably my favorite example of this is, of course, Jinx herself, right? Because as we know, after Silco passed away, Jinx didn't want to have anything to do with anybody. She was on her own. She wanted to be on her own. And then one day while she's walking, she gets hit from above by this kid. And she doesn't realize that at first. And we see how angry she is, right? Like her eyes fill up with pink shimmer. But when she looks over and sees it's just a scared child, her eyes immediately soften. Now, this is an opportunity for Jinx to just walk away from this thing. This child obviously can't hurt her. She had so much time to get up and keep it moving and stay out of anybody's view. But she doesn't leave. And pay attention to the way that she looks at Isha. She's bothered that she seems so scared, and she tries to find out what it is that is scaring her. And she follows her eye line to those men that are chasing her, and she's immediately livid about it. And even though she's been in hiding, she decides to let her cloak fall. She reveals herself. She takes them all out because she is willing to do whatever to protect this child. And it explains why, even though she's so closed off to everyone else, she continues to let Isha hang around because ultimately she's just a kid and she needs to be protected. Those are the values that Zaun has instilled in her. And we get more affirmation in the fight between Jinx and Vi of just how important children are in Zaun. Now, you probably think I'm going to talk about Isha jumping on Jinx and protecting her, and I will talk about that moment, but we actually get a sign that children are important even before that. Because when Jinx tells Vi that she can't believe that she turned blue belly, the thing that Vi says to defend herself for why she is going after Jinx is, I can't believe my sister has orphaned children. Because again, in Zaun, there's really no worse thing you can do than to betray a child. And that's why, as soon as Isha is in the picture, as soon as she jumps on Jinx, Vi stops. And she forces Caitlyn to stop because that's a child right there. Full stop. You have to protect kids. We're not going to attack Jinx if it's going to hurt a kid. And what's Caitlyn's response? She largely doesn't care. That child is not going to stop her from getting jinxed. Now, sure, you could say she was very confident that she had the shot, that she wasn't going to hurt Isha, but ultimately she was going to traumatize Isha severely, and she didn't care about that because why would she? She's not that child's mom. She just doesn't share that same sense of parental responsibility that all Zawnites seem to feel every time they see a kid alone. And they definitely don't seem to share this idea that children are sacred. And it's Caitlin's disrespect for a child that makes their relationship deteriorate. It's what makes Vi doubt her and tell Caitlin, why are you acting like my sister? And funny enough, it is conversely the same thing that makes Vi start to trust Jinx again. I think we first get that moment during the fight when Isha jumps on Jinx. We see a pause from Vi and a look on her face that just seems to say, why would this kid care about my sister? Is my sister still in there somewhere? And when they finally do reconnect to try to find Vander, we see how intensely Vi is watching her with Isha. And when she has that moment where she accidentally hits Isha and Jinx goes to comfort her, that really seems to be a turning point. Once again, look at the look on her face. There's just a softness here in a sense that, okay, my sister is not completely gone. I can see that her culture, her Zaunite values, they are still in there. She is still a part of her community. There's humanity left in her. Again and again, we just constantly get the symbolism that how people treat children means a lot in Zaun. We get it with the other characters too. Like when Silco is trying to convince Vander to fight with him again, one of the reasons Vander says he cannot side with him anymore is, look what you've done to these kids. Even through seemingly casual dialogue, we just get this constant repetition to this idea that how you treat kids determines what kind of person you are in Zaun. The worst of the worst people do not treat children well. And if you are a good person, you will protect kids. And despite Piltover dehumanizing and oppressing the Undercity, referring to them as uncivilized and animals, they actually have a much greater sense of community and responsibility to each other than anyone in Piltover does. And for Piltover being so evolved, the city of progress, they really don't seem to care that much about protecting their most vulnerable. Their individualism has really come at the cost of community.